Because his love passeth understanding. That means there's no knowledge that we have within ourselves to interpret the love of God. All we can do is what the scriptures say, make moanings and groanings. Because it's just that wonderful unto us. And so he says that, read it again.
By this we know that we love. By this we know that we love the children of God when we love God and keeps his commandments. For this is the love of God.
For this is the love of God.
That we keep his commandments.
That we keep his commandments.
And his commandments are not grievous.
And so he says that, watch, I know your works. I know your works. He said, what is the works? The works is the love of God. And the works is to love the children of God and to keep God's commandments. That is the working and the love of God. What works we're working? We're working the works of what God have commanded. Give me Matthew chapter 5. We're going to move through this tonight.
You have heard that it has been said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which spitefully use you.
What verse you started at?
43.
Okay,
And pray for them which spitefully use you and persecute you.
He says, watch now. He says, you have heard that it been said that thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thy enemy. So the law says, love Israel. Love thy neighbor. Jesus said, by the love that you show one to another, that men may know that you are my disciples. So Jesus expands the law to love thy enemy.
That's good teaching.
So to love the enemy is the denying of self. To love God's commandments is to deny thyself.
Truth.
Vengeance belongs to God and not to thyself. So what is our works? Our works is the denying of self. So he says the work of love.
Amen.
He said the work of love. What is the work of the love? It's to hate what God hates and to love what God loves. That is the work of love.
Amen.
Y'all walking with me now?
Yes, sir.
So he says that I tell you to love thy enemy. Read. But I read verse 44.
But I say to you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you.
He says, now watch. He says, watch. Now, you got to hear this because he's talking about the power that he has given us in our tongues. Amen. He said, bless them that curse you. He says, curse not them that curse you. He said, but bless them that speak ill of you. We don't set a blessing upon them. That ain't what he said. He's not talking about speaking a blessing. No, he's not talking about that they be fortunate. That ain't what he's talking about. What he's talking about is don't speak evil of them. He says, pray for them. See, he says, pray that God has mercy upon them. He says, so when they curse you in exchange, what Jesus said upon the cross, forgive them. That's the blessing that you're speaking over them. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. See, we have to understand what come out of the Messiah's mouth. On that cross, his enemies done that. Well, what? They was cursing him, speaking negative of him, evil of him. What did he do? Well, he didn't speak negative of them. He said, have mercy upon them, for they know not what they do. That's what God is saying to us. Read.
Do good to them which hate you.
See, Jesus on the cross, we're going to deal with it tonight. He said, do good to those that hate you. See, this is the law of denying self. He said, this is the works. I know that works. That you do good to those that hate you.
And pray for them which spitefully use you.
He said, pray for them that spitefully use you.
And persecute you.
He said, do what?
Persecute you. That you may be the children of your Father.
So wait a minute. He says now. He says, order for you to be my children now. He said, this is what you have to do. He says, now watch. Remember the Lord said, be ye holy, for I am holy. This is holiness.
Oh, man.
This is the work of holiness.
That's big.
Work of holiness, obedience, not putting a cigarette down. It's not putting a bill down.
Come on now.
It's not putting crack cold that came down. It's not abstaining from fornication. That stuff is not holiness. Holiness is in holiness. Holiness is obedience to God. It is having the life of God. So he says that you may be the children. So wait a minute, of your Father, right? So you're not the children of God if you're not practicing holiness, which is obedience.
True.
If you're not doing what he have done, then you don't belong to him. Read it all.
Which is in heaven.
He said, which is well?
In heaven.
Uh-huh.
For he makes his sun to rise on the evil
Uh-huh.
and on the good.
Uh-huh.
And sends rain on the just and on the unjust.
And so in other words, he's being an example to us by being merciful to those that not even grateful. Those that's not even thankful. Those that don't even give him praise. He says, be like me. He said, I bless. I do righteous. I cause their crops to grow.
Come on now.
Anyhow.
Come on now.
I give them life anyhow. You know, he says, they days rise. You know, the sun rise on them. The rain come on them. And so watch now. Watch. This is not the blessings that we get. This is God's responsibility towards them because he created them.
Right.
This is the mercy and the kindness of God that man can't see. And God says, I still give them increase. I still allow them to prosper. He said, just like I allow you to prosper. I still extend their day. I give them days.
True.
But their days is not eternal like our days if they die in sin. Right. So he says, do what I do. He said, they hate me, but yet I still do good to them. He said, do this that you may be my children. Read 45.
That you may be my children of your Father which is in heaven. For he makes the sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust.
Read.
If you love them which love you, what reward have you? Do not even the publicans the same?
So he said, why are you going to love only those that love you? He said, because I so love the world that I sacrificed. I gave my son. He said, so if you're going to be my children, you got to love those that don't love you.
Come on.
This is the trying of your faith.
Yes, sir.
Faith is operating with obedience. This is the trying of your faith. Can you endure?
Yes,
Are you faithful enough? Are you obedient enough to give people what people are not giving you? You have to give them love when they're not giving you nothing in return but hate.
Yes,
so this is what he's saying, that we may be his children now. He said, just don't love those that love you.
Yes, sir.
He said, do good to those that absolutely don't have no intention of doing good to you. Read.
And if you salute your brethren,
if you greet your brother, you salute your brother, you acknowledge your brother. Read.
What do you more than others? Do not even the publicans so?
So you only going to acknowledge your brothers?
Come on.
Are you going to acknowledge the needs of those that not your brother, that's not in the household of faith? He says, so don't even sinners kind to one another.
Right.
So watch now. So we have to understand that we greet each other in love.
Amen.
He says, greet them in love. Greet them in kindness. Yeah, we greet each other with a holy kiss, with kindness. He says, but can we greet our enemy the same way we greet each other?
Yes, sir.
That is the trying of our patience. We're going to get there tonight. We're going to get there what he's talking about. He said, I know your works now. So we talking about the works. What verse you at?
48.
Read.
Be you therefore perfect.
See, be ye holy. Even as what?
Even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect.
So he watch now. So he speaks of the word perfect.
Come on.
It is holiness. Perfect means holiness. Being holy is obedience. Obedience is submission to God's authority, which is the orders of his laws. Being submissive to God's authority, which is his order of laws. This is a law. This is the decree. This is a commandment to be kept. Right? So watch. Bring what is required. When he's talking about being perfect, to bring forth what is required out of the commandments of God into fullness, into completeness, which is maturity, bringing what God has commanded us into finished works. It's the works of the fruit. It is the commandment of God's love, which is the end of the law. So what is we bringing into maturity? Love.
Yes, sir.
So you're growing by love, right? Love worketh everything else.
Amen.
So he says, bring it to fullness of the commandments. But if I've been taught that there's no commandments, well, how in the world you going to love? Because the end of the commandments is love. In other words, when you walk through the commandments, the end of it is love. And so he says, I need you, through my commandments, is producing love. When you obey me, he says, you're perfected in love. If you love me, keep my commandments. So what are we walking for? We're walking for the maturity that we respond to God all the time in love.
Amen.
See, we respond to God half-hearted some of the time. Why? Because we have left our first love.
Jesus.
So now we don't respond to God. We're slothful with God. We're slow with God. We'll do it tomorrow, God. Did you hear what I'm saying? Because we have left our first love, which is God. And so therefore he says that the working of this is the law.